It's a theater spotlight with your favorite drama queen, Johnny. And we are super excited as Spokane is about to welcome a Tony Award-winning musical celebration concert that is the musical Six.
Divorce, beheaded, die, divorce, beheaded, survived, and tonight we are live. Listen up and let me tell you a story. Welcome to the show, to the history mix. Switching up the flow as we add the prefix. Everybody knows that we used to be six wives, but now we're ex-wives. You must think that I'm crazy. You wanna replace me, baby? There's no way. Get down, you dirty rascal. Get down. You can build me up, you can tear me down. You can try, but I'm unbreakable. We're one of a kind, no category. Too many years lost in history. We're free to take our crown and glory for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 more minute. We're six.
And it's going to run at the First Interstate Center for the Arts. It starts on Tuesday the 23rd, so it's coming right up, and it runs through the 27th. So if you don't have your tickets, I would go get them now. Just go visit our friends at BroadwaySpokane.com. But without further ado, we're going to talk to someone from the show who's going to tell us a lot more about this amazing musical. And we would like to welcome Erin. Now tell me if I say it right. Erin Bohannon.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I'm getting so after 20 years, I'm finally getting this down.
Got it. It's a skill.
Welcome. So
Thank
what
you.
city are you guys in?
Right now we are in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, okay. So you probably already have the snow. So
Oh, we got the snow for sure. We're used to it. We're preparing for you guys.
I was going to say, that's good because we got dumped on yesterday and we're going to get dumped on tomorrow. So it's just there to welcome you. We just want to be consistent.
Exactly.
Now,
It's very kind.
Exactly. Let's start with, I always like to give people who don't necessarily follow the Broadway trades or anything like that. What is this show? What's the premise for Six?
So Six is about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, but it's in the format of a pop concert, and we're all competing to see who had it worst with the king.
Which, if you follow history at all, that's a really tight race.
Yeah, it's a big thing to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I love that you guys talk about girl power because it very much is. I like that it kind of flips it a bit because if you're a historical buff like me, I love watching all the documentaries. And women didn't have it great, and he was not the best. And so I like that in this show. I listen to the soundtrack all the time. There's a lot more women power in it. You mentioned pop concert. What can audiences expect? Because it's not your general play, straightforward play. What can audiences expect when they go?
Absolutely. I think you can expect more of the sound you hear on the radio as opposed to the sound you hear on Broadway, which also makes it really accessible to if you have any friends who are getting into musical theater or don't really particularly like the sound of musical theater. It's a very tangible show to kind of get people like that into it because it's what you would hear from Ariana Grande, from Lizzo. It's very inspired by modern pop and pop music.
Well, and I just kept thinking, every time I listen to the soundtrack, I just keep thinking that Lady Gaga had to have written some of those songs because it is very much you're going to a show or you're listening to the radio, which is beautiful. And also, you talk about delivering it in a more modern way, really. I feel like that's the way to deliver history now. Some great shows, of course. We won't mention any other competing shows. Have done that, and it's done so right. And it's done so well. But one of the intriguing things about you specifically is, first of all, it's your first national tour, right?
Yeah.
Which is amazing. First of all, how's that going for you? It's a lot of work, I know.
Incredible. I mean, the work is worth it. It's what I love to do, so it doesn't feel like work. And I think I've learned more in the past year and a half than I have in my entire life, just from being on the road and doing this show.
All right. Well, speaking of learning more, we had someone tell us that what she was most intrigued by is that, are you truly an understudy for all of the ladies?
I'm actually not. I am an understudy for half of them. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
well, I see.
my relief. I am thankfully not having to cover the entire show. I am dance captain, which means I'm in charge of keeping the show kind of engaged in the dance and choreography factor, keeping everybody on the right mark and the right groove. But in terms of actual coverage, it's me and 3 other alternates, and we all each cover 3 queens.
That's amazing. And I have to say, I love that you say it like, oh, not all of them. I only do 3. 3 is a lot. A lot to have to cover.
It's quite a bit, but like it's so fun. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Now, do you have like that secret song that you would love to have to go fill in for? Like it's your favorite one?
I think
What would
about
that
this
be?
all the time, actually. I was thinking about this last night. I'm tied, actually, between, it's so silly because there's only 3 I don't cover, and I'm tied between 2 songs, but it's the first song, No Way, by Catherine Aragon, like she sings that song, and then the final song, I Don't Need Your Love, Catherine Parr. It's like
Which is a beautiful song.
oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. Like, No Way would be so fun, but I Don't Need Your Love is like that kind of heartbreaking, fun pop ballad that I would love to do.
Right. And it's also that like powerful song. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
self-empowering. Now, did you know much about the history of the wives of Henry VIII prior to getting involved in the show?
Not prior to getting involved. I've of course heard of Henry VIII, and like I've heard of his 6 wives just because it's kind of notorious. That was his whole thing. But I actually studied historically for this show while I was in the callback process just by reading books, which kind of clued me into the way that the narrative of the women was very against them and pro Henry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then during the rehearsal process, we actually all were encouraged to watch documentaries, read books. We all had to do a historical presentation on the queens and the queens we covered. So like we're
Wow.
pretty attuned with the actual history. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, there's stories are my favorite thing. Everybody has a story, and so there's stories. There's that run. And being from America, that's not part of our history book when we're going through and learning. But of course, it's very much in the UK. And so it was only like maybe 3 years ago I learned the rhyme that helps us remember how each wife died, which is so sad. But the divorced, beheaded, and died, divorced, beheaded, survived, which is really with each of them as they go from the first wife to the last wife. What was the most surprising fact you learned about these wives?
Oh, that's a really good question. I found out that I have 2 things because one of them is just a fun thing I like to share, but the other one is like an actual historical thing I just didn't know. The historical thing is that Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, the 2 beheaded ones, were actually cousins. So we call them the beheaded cousins.
Oh, great.
So unfortunately, it runs in the family, apparently.
Yeah.
But the other one I really like to say is that there was a point in which, I can't remember specifically why, but Henry had to not back down from ruling, but temporarily leave. And so Catherine of Aragon at the time was queen, and she took over. And she actually ended up riding into battle on horseback while pregnant in armor.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of like, okay, work, but also like, what? That happened? That was allowed?
Yeah, and you still had a baby? I mean, that's
Yeah.
crazy. The other crazy is, I don't remember who, but one of the wives was the maid of honor in a previous wife's wedding to Henry, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah. No, it's like, you choose outside the pool, dude. Like, there's other women. You don't have to keep locking these.
Exactly. All to get he wanted that male heir, and it didn't happen, I think, until the very, very end. But so as you're on this, so as people are always very fascinated when I talk to people that are on national tours, because actually, if I read correctly, you guys are on tour here. It's still playing in London, and it's on Broadway at the same time. You are doing triple duty out there. Have you ever had a moment where you saw it performed by another crew?
Yes, I've actually had two moments. In the rehearsal process, we were lucky enough to get Broadway tickets from the company to go see what it looks like in full scale. So we
Yeah.
saw the original Broadway company back whenever they were still in the company on Broadway. And I had to do extra coverage last year for the Aragon tour when that was still out. So I got to see them do the production too. And it is fascinating seeing how this show can come across in so many different ways, and the characters can be lovable in so many different ways just from who is playing the character and how they're portraying it. It's amazing. Everybody makes their queen their own.
That is crazy. Now, as I know that recently, so you went to school for this, right? You went to a conservatory, yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you were prepared for the work because this is what you've trained for.
Yeah.
What, as you step into the reality from the schooling, what has been the most surprising thing between the two?
I think the education aspect of musical theater is understandably more analytical in a way that's grade-based and education-based and very much like studious. But I think whenever it comes to the real world, a lot of it is still that. But it's also a lot of instinct. It's a lot of experience and learning on the road as you go. Like, what is my method of taking this on? What is my preparation? What does it look like for me to understand and grow into a role rather than just like one method that I learned in college? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it gives you a good skeleton of what you need, but then you learn what your own process is through experience doing it yourself.
It reminds me a lot of when we're kids and people, we dream of being an adult. And so we have that idea of what it is. And then you step into adulthood and the reality is, I don't know, it makes it more real. It makes it more tangible. Because I have no doubt this is just step one on your gigantic journey that you're on. And a national tour teaches so much. So as an audience is coming in, I mean, you guys hit a city, you have to set up, you have to know how that stage works. It's crazy. What is something that an audience member would find intriguing that maybe an audience member doesn't typically know about behind the scenes as you tour your specific show?
That's a great question. I think something that not a lot of people know is this is true of our tour. I'm not sure how common it is in other tours, but we actually do a lot of things called one-weekers where we're in cities for just 1 week. And then the Sunday night after the matinee and evening show, the crew packs up the set. They move on Monday and they do load-in on Monday. So whenever we have a stint of 1 weekers in a row, we don't get a day off. So we just keep going. Which thankfully, this show is amazing and the company is amazing. So it's easy to keep happy and energized just because we have a good energy in the workplace. But I think not a lot of people understand that, not even as an actor, but just thinking about the crew, they are loading in, loading out, city to city to city. They have no days off, and they're still doing the best work that they can do, and it's incredible. Yeah. So it's very, I think seeing that has personally given me a lot. I already had a respect, of course, but, an even more personal experience respect for the crew that works with us. And I think that the audiences should know that because they need that respect for the crew, too. They have a hard job.
Exactly. Well, you were saying that you're a dance captain, and part of that, I'm sure, comes with, you're doing the same show over, is helping your dancers, the crew, kind of continue to connect to that energy and to bring it up. What has been, so for me, when I'm performing, the audience has a lot to do with it, because you give and take with their energy. What has been your favorite energetic audience that you guys have had so far?
Oh, that's a really good question. I personally, I might be biased in this, but I grew up in Missouri, and one of the cities I grew up in was St. Louis, and we went to St. Louis. We went to the gorgeous, fabulous Fox Theater, which is stunning and huge and historical, and we got to perform there. And I don't know if it was just because the roots I have with the location in the theater or the audience itself, but I was on for Howard in one of the performances on the weekend there, and I just remember how incredible the energy felt and how wonderful the audience was interacting with us, taking what we said, giving us energy back. Whenever that happens, it is unmatched by any other feeling.
See, and there's nothing like it. And one of the things that audiences always talk about, other than the music in the show is so fun, And the songs, see, we are accidentally learning things because we're having so much fun with the songs, but they're very historically accurate. But one of the things that is always brought up is people love the costumes that these are, because it's like they're period inspired. So it makes it cool. It takes a cool twist on what women must have to go through back then. Can you talk to what it's like to perform in those pieces?
Iconic. I mean, they're Tony Award winning, you know what I mean? And for good reason. Like, our head of costume back in London, like, she took inspiration from each of the individual time periods that these queens had their rule and what the armor from their period of rule looked like. So, like, you can see, like, with Catherine of Aragon's pointy shoulders, and you can see with, like, with Parr's peplum and her poofy sleeves, like, there's just remnants of history in each of the costumes, but they're all, like, so lovely designed for the characters that they're portraying as well, and kind of the stereotype that's thrust upon them. Like, Howard is wearing the least because she was seen as the scandalous one.
Right.
Has the green sleeves because of the poem that Henry sent her. It's just so cool to, like, especially getting to know the queens historically in an actual real world sense, and then seeing the influence on the costumes. It's like wearing actual history. And something I really love, a fun fact about the costumes, is that Anne Boleyn has the bee, like in her portrait, she has a bee on her costume right here.
Right.
Then Catherine Howard also has a choker with a K right here because they're the beheaded twins.
Oh!
The beheaded cousins. So there's a little, like, familial tying thing to them around their neck, of course.
I did not know that. I think that's crazy. Also, I always felt like the final queen, how lucky she was that he was almost dead, because no queen got out of this.
No, actually, she historically was almost beheaded as well, because she was a big influence in the Protestant world, like, and he was devoutly Catholic. So it was a big contingency, but I think he was so old at the time that he was just like, whatever. I'm gonna die soon anyway.
Right. I always think it's funny because he was devoutly him, really, because he started his own church just because he wanted to get divorced. He just makes up his own rules. So before we wind this down, first of all, I want to tell everyone in Spokane, if this was how history class was presented, we would all be much better, is all I have to say. But if you had to pick out of the 6 wives, who do you feel the most for, just by knowing their stories in history?
Absolutely. I personally feel the most for Catherine Howard. I think she's a good example of what it looks like to be seen as a woman who is in reality getting groomed, but then being blamed for the sexual activity of men around her.
Exactly. And you know what's terrifying to me, just knowing history and researching the show a bit, is to see that was centuries ago. And honestly, we just painted it different, but going through the same still, today.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. But art, in my opinion, is how we reach the masses. So I love that you guys are bringing this to us here in Spokane. We love Broadway here. I'm obsessed with it. And I think you'll get another really good audience experience from your Spokane crowd.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Wonderful. So remember, everybody, this opens on Tuesday the 23rd. It runs all the way through Sunday the 27th. Go get your tickets now. Like I said, Best of Broadway brings these wonderful shows to us. We love partnering with them. But go to BroadwaySpokane.com and get your tickets today. And then cheer on this amazing team of people who have put it together. And who knows, maybe we'll get lucky and you'll end up on stage for us. And then... and then we can celebrate you. Thank you, Erin, so much for spending time with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, we will see you in the next spotlight. Bye.
Hey, Tom. Patreon. How's it going? Patreon. I am doing great. Patreon.
Wow, are you having like a stroke or something?
What are you talking about? Patreon. That's just my weird eye. Patreon.
Well, no, I'm used to that, but you're skipping like an old CD. Should I knock you on the side of the head?
Oh, okay, calm down. Patreon. I read this thing on subliminal advertising, and since we are pushing our Patreon, I thought I'd try it out. Patreon.
Well, very subtle. I'm not sure your version of subliminal advertising is quite the method they had in mind. Patreon. Now you have me doing it.
Once you start, it's kind of hard to stop. It's kind of soothing.
And if by soothing you mean nails screeching on a chalkboard, then sure. To be very clear, it's annoying.
Yeah, I picked that up. Thanks.
We could just be straightforward and tell people to visit our Patreon at patreon.com/thequeercentric.
But I was hoping to be cool and stealth-like.
And you were accomplishing neither of those things.
You're always ruining my fun. Fine. We can just tell them that we have different levels of donations and you get cool stuff on each level and even get exclusive things.
Oh, that's the attitude. Your enthusiasm will be really contagious.
Visit us at patreon.com/thequeercentric to support us today. I mean, I swear it's fun, and we will forever be grateful.
There you go.
Patreon.
Come on, are you serious?
Leave me alone.